بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والجنة للموحدين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين نبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. All praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the choicest of blessings and salutations upon our master Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us to gather again, remembering Him subhanahu wa ta'ala and studying His religion, studying the Sharia that He subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the heart of our messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, reminding ourselves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent us to these lands, to the world. He created us to test us, whom of us are best in action, whom of us can follow His Sharia best, whom of us can worship Him best, whom of us can please Him most, whom of us can wayfare and travel to Him subhanahu wa tabaraka wa ta'ala. And alhamdulillah, this is our fourth lesson, but in reality it's our third. In our first class we started rather late, and after starting late we used the first class to encourage brothers and sisters to be as regular as they possibly can in the attending of this program and this course offered by Muslims Connected. And our actual fiqh lesson only started in the second class, where we spoke about how we confirm that the month of Ramadan has entered. We spoke about the witnessing of the crescent. We spoke about Sha'ban being 29 or 30 days. We spoke about how many persons need to sight the moon. We spoke about how things happen on the ground over here. We spoke about the Crescent Observers Society. We spoke about Shaykh Ahmad Hendricks, who serves currently as the judge for that particular purpose of declaring that a new month has entered. Even though, alhamdulillah, many of you may have heard that the official appointment of a new judge, the official judge of the Muslim Judicial Council, is the appointment has been made official about just more than a week ago now. And our very dear and good friend, our beloved Shaykh Muhammad Falanda, was appointed as the Qadi of the MJC. Thereafter, we spoke about the conditions for the validity of fasting. Now, the conditions for the validity of fasting, I said, it's something which is rather broad. It's something which is broad because it includes conditions and it includes arkan, which are elements. And I did not get into a discussion what are shurut and what are arkan, because all of them, when listed together, are merely referred to as the conditions for the validity of fasting, shurut, sihhati, as-sawm. And we covered thus far, alhamdulillah, a number of those conditions. Not a number, alhamdulillah, thus far, we covered all the conditions of the validity of fasting. And what I want to do is, I want to use 5 minutes of your valuable time just to revise those points very quickly, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And we said that in total there are 5, or some have listed them as 6 conditions for the validity of fasting. The first was that one must make an intention for every day of fasting of the day of the month of Ramadan. We spoke about the conditions of the intention. The second condition for the validity of fasting, and these two, the niyyah and the second one is basically the elements of fasting, is abstaining from anything that invalidates the fast. Al-imsaku anil muftirat. And we said the things that you need to abstain from, they are sexual relations. You need to abstain from masturbation. You need to abstain from inducing vomiting. You need to abstain from allowing a substance to reach a body cavity. In my dars last week, if you are not part of last week's class, then it is very important that you go back to last week's class and understand this concept of wusulul ayni or wusulu aynin ila ma yusamma jawfan. abstaining from allowing a substance to reach a body cavity. I spoke about that at length in last week's dars, and there were many important discussions that were born from that, such as the asthma pump, injections, suppositories, and the like. That was number 2. So those were the 2 conditions for the validity of fasting. The third condition for the validity of fasting was you must be Muslim. The 4th was that you must have an intellect. You must be sound mind. If you are mad, then your fasting will not be valid. Neither will fasting be compulsory upon you. The 5th condition was that, and this refers to our sisters, that the lady should be free or pure from menstruation and postnatal bleeding. Now, of course, if a lady is bleeding outside of bleeding and it is not postnatal bleeding, that's what we call istihada, then of course fasting will be valid. Fasting is compulsory upon her and a fasting will be valid. However, if she has her hayd, menstruation, or she has postnatal bleeding, then she's not permitted to fast, and her fasting will not be valid if she does fast. Now, so a lady that is fasting, she may abstain from food while she has a hayd or while she has postnatal bleeding if she wishes, but she cannot abstain from food with an intention of fasting. Even if she abstains from food with an intention of fasting, then she has done something which is prohibited. So she has to be free from menstruation and postnatal bleeding for the entire duration of the day. And the 6th condition for the validity of fasting is that you must know that this day that I'm fasting is a valid day to fast. I must know that. If I'm uncertain whether today is a valid day of fasting or not, then my fasting is not valid. By way of example, if I'm uncertain, is today a day of Eid or not a day of Eid, right? Then I know that I'm prohibited from fasting on the day of Eid, and I'm doubting is today a day of Eid or not a day of Eid. That would mean that my fasting would not be valid. We had additional discussions about what days are haram to fast and so forth and so on. But we are moving on now to a new discussion. What I wish to cover in today's class, inshallah ta'ala, and we have 1 month left before the month of Ramadan. We have 1 month left before the month of Ramadan. Now, this evening is the 1st of Sha'ban. The month of Rajab has come to an end. The month of Rajab, which was the month of istighfar and a sacred month declared sacred by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has now come to an end. And we have entered the month of Sha'ban. It's the 1st of Sha'ban this evening. And what that means is we are now exactly 1 month away from Ramadan. Exactly 1 month away from Ramadan. I think we should all take a moment just to let that sink in, that Ramadan is 1 month away, and how prepared are we? And how much preparation have we been making for this very, very important month, this crucial month, this month that changes lives, this month that can connect you and I to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah overlook our negligence in preparing adequately for Ramadan. In the month of Sha'ban, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to fast excessively. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, in some narration, she said that he fasted the entire month. Like there was barely a day in the month of Sha'ban that the Prophet did not fast. And when he was asked why he fasted this much in the month of Sha'ban, he responded that I do so ta'zeeman li Ramadan, in showing reverence and importance and greatness to the month of Ramadan. He fasted Sha'ban, and his act of fasting was to show Ramadan that Ramadan is important, to show you and I that Ramadan is an important month that demands preparation. And this is a very, very important lesson that you and I should be taking. But alhamdulillah, by virtue of us being part of this class of knowledge, we are preparing in our own way for this blessed and noble month. So in today's dars, this doesn't come in the essentials of Islam, but I want to have the discussion with you nonetheless, because These are things that often happen during the month of Ramadan. I want to cover, first of all, upon whom fasting is compulsory, so we know who should fast. Another important discussion that we need to have is what is the ruling of fasting in relation to children? Should children fast? Should they not fast? What does the Sharia have to say about the fasting of children? What we also wish to cover in today's dars, inshallah ta'ala, is when is it permissible for me not to fast? So I know that if I'm a traveler, I don't have to fast, right? But what are the conditions? How do I understand when am I a traveler? And is it every traveler that does not need to fast? When don't I need to fast, etc.? We're going to be discussing that. We're going to be speaking about the ill. We're going to be speaking about the pregnant and breastfeeding lady. We also want to speak about when do I have to pay a fidya, which is a penalty for not fasting. When do I have to pay that fidya? When don't I need to pay a fidya? And also a person that broke his fast, what does that person need to do? How do they need to make qada? When must qada be made immediately? When does qada not need to be made immediately? That's what we want to discuss today, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. The only discussion that remains after today's discussion is we want to touch on the topic of i'tikaf, and then we want to speak about the spiritual dimensions of fasting. So we have 4 weeks for Ramadan. We're going to speak about the topics that I mentioned today, upon whom fasting is compulsory: the fasting of a child, the pregnant and breastfeeding lady, the traveler. These are the 4 most important points that I wish to cover in today's class. We'll conclude that today. In next week, I'm going to touch upon the topic of i'tikaf, and immediately thereafter, we're going to jump into a discussion regarding the fasting of the pies, the fasting with one's limbs and body parts. Those spiritual aspects and dimensions of fasting that we'll be covering in next week and the week thereafter, inshallah ta'ala. So we have 3 classes left this week, the following week, and the week thereafter. The last week before Ramadan, we won't have class. We will just be preparing for and anticipating the arrival of this gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the month of the Quran, the month of Ramadan. So upon whom is fasting compulsory? Fasting is compulsory. There are 6 conditions. If these 6 conditions are met within an individual, fasting is compulsory upon that person. If these 6 conditions are not met within an individual, fasting is not compulsory. So all 6 must be present. If any one of the 6 are not there, fasting is not compulsory. So what are they? The first is al-aqlu. You must be of sound mind. You must have intellect. A person that does not have a sound mind, in other words, somebody who is mad, such a person, fasting is not compulsory upon him. However, this is a person who is naturally mad, or a person who went mad on account of medication that was permissible for him or her in the first place. As for a lady or male, a person that goes mad on account of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by consuming drugs or by consuming alcohol or doing or medication that was haram, such a person has transgressed the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and even though they are mad, fasting is still compulsory upon them. So when we say that a condition for fasting is you must be of sound mind, then the intention is to exclude the mad person. The mad person, fasting is not compulsory upon him. However, a person that enters a state of madness on account of transgressing the laws of Allah, fasting is still compulsory upon that person, meaning that when they become sane and their madness disappears, they will have to make qada of the time that they did not fast on account of madness. As for a person that when naturally mad and was insane, was not by his full senses or by his full mind, such a person, fasting is not compulsory upon him. When he gains his senses in a few months from now or a year from now, he does not need to make qada, because fasting was not compulsory upon him or her in the first place. Now, everyone sees that. Wal bulugh, the second condition is you must be baligh. You must have reached the age of puberty. You must have reached the age of puberty. The age of puberty is simple. In both the case of a male and a female, if they were to have a wet dream, then that would mean that they've reached the age of puberty. or they've reached the age of 15 solar years. Sorry, 15 lunar years. That makes them baligh. That's a discussion. There's detail to it, but it's usually discussed when we speak about salah. I'm not going to repeat that, have that discussion with you right now. Once you are baligh, you reach the age of puberty. So you have to be of sound mind. You've reached the age of puberty. The interesting thing here is that we're going to discuss the child in a moment. A child that has reached the age of 7 years, reached the age of 7, and is able to distinguish between right and wrong, that which is beneficial and that which is not. That person, that child, the parent should instruct such a child to fast. Whether he fasts or not, that's not important, but the parent needs to instruct that child to fast, as we will discuss a bit later, inshallah ta'ala. What's interesting here is that our jurists have mentioned that a child that did not fast from the age of 7 until the day the child became baligh and aqil, etc., it's recommended for that child to actually make qada of the years that he did not fast from the age of 7. But the fact that they're saying it's recommended that he makes qada of days of fasting that he missed from the age of 7, what that tells you is that the fasting wasn't compulsory. Fasting only becomes compulsory once the child reaches the age of puberty. Baligh. No. The third condition that must be met in order for fasting to be compulsory is al-qudratu ala sawm. You must have the capacity and the ability to fast. You must have the capacity and the ability to fast, both physically and legally. So by way of example, a person who cannot physically fast on account of what? He cannot physically fast because of old age. He's too old. Or a person has a sickness that has no cure, right? He has an incurable illness that prevents him or her from fasting. Examples of this may be someone that is suffers from a serious level of is a high level diabetic, and fasting would by agreement of doctors harm him to such an extent that he's going to or she's going to become very ill, or they may lose their life, right? That is a sickness that may remain with a person for the rest of his or her life. So there's la yurja bur'u, they don't desire to be cured from such a sickness. Now, so those are physical incapabilities of fasting. Those people that are incapable of fasting permanently, they are excused from fasting. Fasting is not compulsory upon them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that we have not placed difficulty upon you in this deen. وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. However, I think it's very important to note here that every person knows themselves best. And there's many people that look for excuses not to fast. And this is something that we should take very serious. I should have within my heart a very strong desire to fast for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I should not be looking for reason and excuses not to fast. Many of you that are with me online right now, if you were to look at your grandparents or your great-grandparents, you would find that many of them reached at such ages where fasting became so difficult for them that they were technically excused from fasting, but they would force themselves to fast because they couldn't accept the fact that how can I not be fasting in the blessed, holy, sacred month of Ramadan? And that's the attitude that a believer should have. Of course, once a lady or a brother reaches an age where fasting just becomes so difficult for them, the difficulty is measured by the difficulty that makes tayammum permissible, then that person would be allowed, fasting would not be compulsory upon that person, in which case that person does not need to fast. Some elderly people, they put their body through unnecessary strain and through unnecessary difficulty in their desire and passion to fast, which is admirable, but sometimes children should advise the elderly and the sick that now is not the time to play with your health. Allah has not made fasting compulsory upon you. There's no need for you to be pushing yourself that much, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Also in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. And upon those who are able to fast, they should pay a fidya. Yet they do not fast, they should pay a fidya. A fidya, I said, is an amount of monies that a person pays when they are not capable of fasting. Now, what this ayah means is there's two interpretations for this ayah. One of the interpretations is that in the early days of Islam, you were given a choice between fasting and paying a fidya. So even if I was a young man of 30 years old and I'm playing rugby and soccer and I'm as healthy as a fish, and the month of Ramadan enters, in the early days of Islam, if I did not wish to fast, fasting was not obligatory upon me. Therefore, Allah says, and upon those who are able to fast, if they do not fast, they just need to pay a fidya. And we know the fidya last year was around 20 rands. So I paid 20 rands a day for not fasting, and that was it. Right? And then, of course, the scholar said that based on that understanding of the ayah, this verse was repealed. It was abrogated. And Allah sent a new ruling that شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم. Allah said, whoever witnesses the month must fast. It became a command and compulsory upon you to fast, and you no longer had the option of paying a fidya. Interpretation of this ayah, Allah says, upon those who are able to, yet they do not fast, they just need to pay a fidya. They said Allah refers here to the elderly and the sick who are able to fast, but they are able to fast with great difficulty. So if they do not fast on account of the great difficulty, they should merely pay a fidya for every day, a meal to someone who is ill. And I told you previously that is technically it's one mud. The fidya that you pay, the elderly and the sick who's not capable of fasting, they need to pay a fidya for every day they do not fast. The value of that fidya is 750 grams of rice. They can a 1 kilogram of rice and give it again, just to recap, so to make sure that everybody is with me, what are we discussing? We are discussing upon whom fasting is compulsory. Fasting is compulsory upon you if 6 conditions are met. If you meet 6 conditions, fasting is compulsory. Number 1, saint. I'm sure everyone with us are saint, right? And therefore you met the first condition. Second condition, you must be baligh. You must have reached the age of puberty. I'm sure most of you have reached the age of puberty. I would be very happy if there are young men and sisters that have joined us that have not yet reached the age of puberty. And this may be an opportunity for them to start asking their parents about puberty. What does it mean to be baligh? And what does it mean to be a pubescent? The translation of baligh is a pubescent. And the parents should either teach them, but if they know the answers, or they should come and seek guidance to determine what exactly makes a person baligh. Number 2 was baligh. Number 2, you must have the capability to fast. Now, another condition, the 4th condition for fasting to be compulsory upon you is that you must be Muslim. If you are not Muslim, then fasting is not compulsory upon you. I had a discussion regarding this last week as well. The 5th condition is you must be healthy. If you are not healthy, if you have a sickness that makes it impossible for you to fast. Let's say you have a sickness, you need to take medication. If you don't take medication, you're going to become even more sick, right? Or you're going to bring harm onto yourself. Then fasting is not compulsory upon you because you're ill. Now, what level of sickness? They measure the level of sickness based upon such difficulty that makes tayammum permissible. That's a discussion. If you require clarity on it, we can look at it perhaps in a class ahead, inshallah ta'ala. So number 5 is must be healthy. The 6th condition is that needs to be met before fasting becomes compulsory upon you is that you must be a resident. You must be a muqim. And what is meant by muqim over here is that you should be stationed in one city or one area for more than 4 days. For more than 4 days. So it's the day of arrival, but the day of arrival is only calculated to a maximum of 12 hours approximately. And then there's 3 days The rule is that if you settle in a community, in an area, one particular area, for more than 3 days, then you are considered to be a muqim, a resident. Jum'ah would be compulsory upon you. Fasting would be compulsory upon you. However, those 3 days, they add to it the day of arrival, which is approximately 12 hours, the way they calculated, and the day of departure, which is approximately 12 hours. And therefore, I said 4 days. If I can give you an example very quickly, because this is something that most students don't understand. Many of you often travel. And when traveling, you want to know, am I a traveler or am I not a traveler? Right? So if I'm traveling to George and I arrive at George on Friday, I make it to perform Jummah at George. So I arrive in George for Jummah on Friday, right? The Friday I arrive Jummah until Maghrib, that will be counted as my day of arrival. So now from Maghrib Friday, I need to count 3 days. Saturday Maghrib, Sunday Maghrib, I arrive Friday. Saturday Maghrib, Sunday Maghrib, Monday Maghrib. Monday Maghrib is 3 days. My day of departure would be now between Maghrib and Fajr. If I travel Maghrib and Fajr, it means that from Jum'ah till Maghrib on Friday was my day of arrival. Then Saturday Maghrib, Sunday Maghrib, Monday Maghrib, those are my 3 days. If I travel now between Maghrib on Monday evening and Fajr on Tuesday morning, then my day of departure would be, if I travel before Fajr, then that would be my day of departure between Maghrib and Fajr. If I ever remain there on Tuesday till beyond Fajr, then it means I'm actually staying now in George for more than 3 days, plus the day of arrival and plus the day of departure. If that doesn't make 100% sense to you, then don't worry too much about it. I could always explain it to you at a later stage. It is something that many, even students and sometimes scholars, don't appreciate and understand correctly. It's going to take time perhaps for me to give you more examples, but this is essentially what it is. If you arrive Friday on a Jum'ah, you must travel Tuesday morning before Fajr. If you're traveling Tuesday morning after Fajr, then you are considered, from the time you arrive Friday, you are considered to be a muqim, which means that fasting will be compulsory upon you. You are not a traveler. So the condition, the 6th condition is that you must be a muqim. Most of us, we're at home. We are not travelers. We haven't traveled anywhere. We're not settling down in any place for 4 days or 5 days. We are resident here within our homes. Not only are we muqim, we are also what the scholars call mustawtin. So because we are at home and not traveling, we meet all 6 conditions. I have aql, I have intellect, I'm sound mind, I'm baligh, I'm capable of fasting, I'm Muslim, I have good health, and I'm a resident. If these 6 conditions are met, fasting is wajib upon me. If these 6 conditions are not met, then fasting is not wajib upon me. Now, that being said, the next thing that comes up now is the sabi. The sabi is a youngster. Now, a sabi, a young girl or a young boy that has not reached the age of puberty. We now know that fasting for them is not compulsory. Think of your sons and daughters at home. If they have not reached the age of puberty, they have not fulfilled one of the 6 conditions. If they have not fulfilled one of the 6 conditions, then fasting is not compulsory upon them. That's understood. The question now is that there is, however, something that is compulsory upon the parents. Fasting may not be compulsory upon the child, but there's something that is compulsory upon the parents. What is compulsory upon the parents? When my child reaches the age of 7, and he or she has the ability to discern between good and right, they've reached the age of tamyiz, then it is now wajib upon the mother and father to command the child to fast. So there are 2 things. The child reaches the age of 7. The child has the ability to discern between right and wrong, tamyiz. The child has the capacity to fast, which is generally the case of any healthy child at the age of 7, they have the capacity to fast. Then it is wajib upon the parents to command the child to fast. If the parent does not command the child to fast, now, just what we mean by 7, is not that they reach the age of 7. They've completed the age of 7, right? So in other words, the child is actually turned 8. When he turned 8, it means he completed the age of 7. So I just want to rectify myself because I know the way I expressed it, that's the way it's written in our fiqh, but the way our fiqh is written is actually, what it actually means is the child turned 8 because 7 years have passed by. And we're not speaking about 10 solar years, we're speaking about 7 solar years, we're speaking about 7 lunar years now. So after he completed 7 years, meaning he turned 8 lunar years, then, and he's a mumayyiz, and he has the ability to fast, or she, then it is wajib upon the parent to command him to fast. Now, that doesn't mean that the child must fast. The parent need to instruct the child to fast, and if the child doesn't fast, khalas, the parent did that which is wajib upon them. But when the parent doesn't instruct the child to fast, then the parent is guilty of sin. The parent is guilty of not fulfilling an obligation towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No. And that is something that we must pay attention to, and we need to start speaking more about it. Most parents don't realize that for them to command their children to fast once they completed the age of 7, meaning they've entered year 8 of their life, they don't realize that they are disobeying Allah by not commanding their children to fast. In fact, some parents, never mind instructing their children to fast, they encourage their children not to fast. That is even worse. That is even worse. So what we can do, or what we should do as parents, instruct the child to fast. Thereafter, if the child doesn't fast, if the child eats something or has something to drink, then there's no problem. The parents don't need to hit the children, they don't need to reprimand them, they don't need to shout at them. They just need to give them the instruction. If they don't fast, then the parents have fulfilled their obligation towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, once the child completes 10 years, meaning the child enters into his 11th year, right? He turned 10 and then he completed the year 10 and now he entered into his 11th year. That's according to Ibn Hajar. Ramli says no, once he turns 10, from the day he turns 10, during that year, while he is 10, even before he completes his 10th year, before he turns 11, in other words, Ramli said, now it becomes the parent's responsibility to hit the child so that the child can fast. And of course, the same discussion applies to Salah. When they reach complete 7 years, meaning they reach 8, they have tamheez and they are able to pray. It's compulsory upon the parents to command the children to pray. If the parent doesn't command the child to pray from that age, the parent is a sinner in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once they reach the age of 10, then they need to hit the child. However, I know hitting becomes it's a very sensitive topic. And rightfully so. Child abuse is something which is very serious, right? Child abuse is something that we must speak out against. Child abuse is I would never, ever, ever stand for, right? But you must know that the instruction of hitting the child is coming from who? From the master of masters, from the best of Allah's creation, from the cream of the cream, from that prophet who knows better than every parent, any parent knows over their own children, right? But we need to understand the dawabit. The dawabit of hitting was that it shouldn't be a hitting that leaves any mark. It shouldn't be a hitting that bruises the child. All of that is haram. And on top of it, the Sharia says that the hitting should just be a hitting that instills within the child that you're doing something that is very disappointing and very upsetting and displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? It shouldn't be a beating. It should be a slight hitting. And thereafter, in that slight hitting is only something that is permissible, when it is effective in bringing about a change within the child. If it's not effective in bringing about change in the child, then they say it's not permissible for you to hit the child. So these parameters should be understood when we speak about hitting children. And no one should ever be able to say that Islam encourages child abuse. Kalla wa kalla wa kalla. Never, ever, ever will Islam encourage a person to abuse a child. The Prophet ﷺ was a prophet of mercy. He had more mercy. I have sons and I have daughters, and my heart is merciful to my children but the heart of the Prophet is more merciful to my children than what my heart can be merciful to my own children. There's no one that had more mercy in his heart to any of the creation, Allah, more than Sayyiduna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Now, however, it becomes compulsory upon the parent to command once they complete the age of 7, and once they reach the age of 10 according to Ramli, and complete the age of 10 according to Ibn Hajar, it's compulsory upon them to hit the child in order to that the child make salah and fast the month of Ramadan with the parameters of hitting, as I explained and discussed to you a few moments ago. And this is a very important discussion that you and I need to take home. Now, I'm going to come to the questions in a moment, inshallah. I only see one question here thus far, which means that everyone must be understanding my class very well. And everyone also know the ahkam of fiqh of fasting also very well, because no one is asking any question. Tamam. What I want to discuss now is that there are 4 instances. There are 4 instances when fasting is compulsory upon you, but it becomes permissible for you to break your fast. Now, there are 4 instances where fasting is compulsory upon you, but it becomes permissible for you to break the fast. Or rather, there are 4 instances that exempt you from fasting being compulsory upon you. I think that is more accurate. The author, he said that وَيَجُوزُ الْفِطْرُ, it's permissible for one not to fast in the month of Ramadan under the following 4 circumstances. The first is when you are a traveler. لِلْمُسَافِرِ سَفَرًا طَوِيلًا. However, the condition, if you are a traveler and you don't want to fast, then there are conditions that must be met. The first condition is that your journey must have started before Fajr. This is the Rajih in the Madhab, the official view in the Shafi'i school. Even though there are alternative views within the Madhab that says, irrespective of whatever time of the day you fast, once you're a traveler, you can break your fast. Right? I'm not going to get into that detail. Those views exist. But the official view is that if you commence a journey before Fajr, now, when are you considered to be a traveler? That's also another interesting discussion. Right? When exactly are you considered to be a traveler? In our fiqh of old, it was very easy to determine when you're a traveler. They said cities were built within walls. Cities were built within walls. And like the qal'as that you find within Egypt and elsewhere, all cities that were built within walls. If you leave the walls of your city, you're a traveler. If I live 1 meter away from the wall of my city, and I pass the wall of my city through the door of my city, khalas, I'm a traveler. Even if I only traveled now for 1 meter. Tamam. If I'm not living in a city, they said wherever the buildings end, once I pass the last building, before I reach the outskirts where there's no more buildings, then I'm considered to be a traveler. When I'm living in the desert, they said once you pass the peg of the last tent. So a tent will stop, but there's still a rope coming down that is pegged into the ground. They said once you pass the last peg of the tents that you are traveling from the area you're traveling, then you are considered to be a traveler. Now, all of that, how does it help you and I within the city that we find ourselves in? In our fiqh, they speak about al-qura al-mutalasiqah, and this makes it very complicated. They speak about you had a village. Let's say this is one village. I actually wanted to demonstrate on my table, but the camera, for some reason, is a bit higher today. So let's say this is one village, right? And this is another village. The rule is once I leave the last building in this village, once I leave that, I'm a traveler. And I'm traveling to another village, which is maybe 1 kilometer away or 2 kilometers away, or whatever the case may be, right? But now what happens is these villages, they start expanding and expanding and growing and growing and growing until the 2 villages meet. When the 2 villages meet, then the 2 villages now become one village. So if I'm traveling from this village in that direction, I must travel through both villages until I get to the end of the second village. Then only I'm considered to be a traveler, right? And when This is 2. What if 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 villages all came together and met, and now they all became one massive village? When exactly are you considered to be out of your city? Now, also the scholars, they speak about if there is a river that separates 2 villages, then crossing the river means you become a traveler. Or if there's a very distinguishing pathway or road or something of that kind. Based on those expressions that exist within our fiqh, the position that I've been practicing upon and adopting for a long time is, currently I'm teaching here at the madrasa in Athlone. I live in a community that is connected to Athlone. And to my left over here, those of you who knows Athlone and knows this community, you'll be able to understand my example very well. In front of me, there's a road, Jan Smuts Drive, which is a single lane with a small island and a single lane. And then there's another area over there, I think it's called Drive, which is a single lane on each, separates Athlone from Alisdale. And therefore, the more cautious position would be to consider Alisdale and Athlone all to be one area. To my left, there's Bokmakiri. Between Athlone and Bokmakiri, there's Klipfontein Road. Klipfontein Road has 2 lanes with a small island, another 2 lanes, and then Bokmakiri. I still believe that it would be difficult to say with certainty that Bokmakiri is not connected to Athlone and therefore 2 separate areas, so I consider them to be one. But what I do consider to be something that separates one area from another is the N2. Because first of all, the N2 is a national road, number 1. Number 2 is the N2 has 2 and sometimes 3 lanes. And then there's an island, another 2 or 3 lanes. And then even the way the highways are constructed is that between the area and the highway itself, the beginning of the lanes, the 2 or 3 lanes that the N2 has, there's a large piece open field, right? So if you look at Bokmakiri, first of all, there's a river between Bokmakiri and what's on the other side? Is it Pinelands? I think Pinelands is, right? There's a river, then you have the N2, and you have another piece of field, and eventually you find houses. For me, those 2 areas are definitely not connected. And almost the same discussion can apply to the N2 right down. All the areas on this side of the N2 are not connected to the areas on the other side of the N2. And for me, that's a very clear distinction, separation between areas. Therefore, my practice is that once I reach the N2 and I consider myself to be a traveler. Once I reach the N2 and my ultimate destination is beyond 82 kilometers, I now consider myself to be a traveler. Because I believe now that I've come to the end of the area that I reside in, and therefore I'm a traveler. Now, when is fasting not compulsory upon me? If I reach the N2 before Fajr enters, so I'm a traveler. After I reach the N2, Fajr enters, I was considered a traveler. Now remember, not just I reached the N2, I reached the N2 and I must be traveling for more than 82 kilometers. I'm traveling all the way to George. Or I'm traveling to the airport and I'm getting on a plane and I'm flying to Johannesburg, which is a few thousand kilometers away. So once I've reached the N2, if I reach the N2 and I'm now considered to be a traveler and the waqt of Fajr has not yet entered, then it means I'm a traveler before Fajr, and therefore fasting is not compulsory upon me. I don't need to fast that day. I can eat that day and I can make qada after the month of Ramadan. This also should answer the question that many people have in their minds. I get asked this question very often. I'm leaving for Umrah, or I'm leaving for Hajj, or I'm going to Johannesburg. When I reach Cape Town International Airport, can I make qasr and jump? Can I shorten my prayer? And can I join prayers? Does the leniences for the of a traveler now apply to me? Yes or no? Anyway, on this side of the N2, we're living now in Athlone or Crawford or Rondebosch East or Garlandale. If you live in Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, Ottery and Wynberg and Grassy Park, right? Let's assume all these areas are connected, right? There may be other massive roads that also break you up, like the M5. The M5 is massive. It's 2 lanes with big fields on each side, right? I don't believe that what we call Rondebosch East to be the same area of Rondebosch. I believe them to be completely two separate areas. Either way, by the time you get to the airport, in my mind, no matter where you stay in Cape Town, you are now already a traveler, and you can already make jam, and you can already make qasr. I don't want to stray off topic too much. The point that we are coming to is that once you are a traveler and deemed a traveler before Fajr has entered, then fasting is not compulsory upon you. However, if I'm going for Umrah and my flight is at 1 p.m., so I leave home at 11 a.m., so I started fasting already, and 11 a.m. I leave home. I get to the airport, I'm a traveler, and now I say I'm a traveler, I don't want to fast. No, according to the official view in the madhab, you must complete the fast of that day, because the condition for you not to fast when you are a traveler is that you must have already been a traveler before Fajr entered. Naam. وَلِلْمُسَافِرِ سَفَرًا طَوِيلًا مُبَاحًا. The second thing is that the travel must be a halal travel. If a person jumps onto the N2 before Fajr and is traveling, where are you going, brother? No, I'm going to the casino in Caledon, and I'm going to go and gamble. So the objective of his journey is haram. His safar is a haram travel. His travel is a haram travel. He must fast even if he started traveling before Fajr, because he's not on a permissible travel, he is on a haram travel. Now, so safar or travel is one of the things that makes fasting not compulsory upon you, with the conditions that I mentioned. The second person upon whom is this has already covered is a person that come to him by fasting. I'm not going to go back to that. Third, year doesn't matter. Whether the pregnant lady is pregnant on the account of zina, fornication, or adultery. Like, remember we said if a person, I'm connected all the time to the wrong internet. I'm going to switch over to a stronger internet connection. Just give me 1 second. Sorry for that. I switched over to a stronger internet connection. So we said if the person traveling on a haram is traveling on a haram journey, then the special lenience or license to not fast doesn't apply to that person. However, if a lady is pregnant, irrespective of whether she's pregnant on account of a halal relationship with her husband or whether it was zina, fornication, or adultery, if she's pregnant, right, or she's breastfeeding, right, even if she's not breastfeeding her own child, and she fears that by not eating, she's going to bring harm to herself. She's going to bring harm to herself that may lead to her becoming ill or taking ill. Or she fears that by not eating, harm is going to come the way of the child. So a pregnant lady, she says, she's advised by a doctor that your condition and your state is such that if you fast, you're going to harm the child and you may lose the child. Or the breastfeeding lady, she's told by 2 Muslim doctors of integrity that by fasting, your milk will dry up, and your milk drying up will result in your child being harmed, and the child may not develop properly and correctly. Then for the pregnant and breastfeeding lady, fasting will not be compulsory. Now I need you to take note of a number of things that I just mentioned now. It is not a general ruling that any lady that is pregnant or breastfeeding automatically does not need to fast. No, that's not the case. Right? Who are we saying? A lady that fears that she's going to bring harm to herself, or she fears that she's going to bring harm to the child. How does she know that she's going to bring harm to herself or she's going to bring harm to the child? She knows that by the advice of Muslim doctors of integrity. And that may be true to some women folk, and it may not be true to others. How many of our mothers fasted during pregnancy, right? My mother always tells me that she fasted while she was pregnant with myself, and alhamdulillah, for the better part of my health, I have good health, and my development has been fine. So many Muslim females feel that they have the capacity and ability to fast, and if they regularly going for their checkups with doctors, and Muslim doctors of integrity tell them that it's fine to fast, they are not excused from fasting, and fasting remains compulsory upon them. However, if fear exists for themselves or for their children and doctors approve of it, then fasting will not be compulsory upon them. So that's the third person that is excused of fasting. The fourth person is a very sort of it's a hypothetical situation, and this hypothetical situation says that you see somebody is on the verge of dying. Now your imagination can run wild over here, right? The common example given is that somebody is drowning and you need to go assist that person that is drowning. But in assisting that person that is drowning, you may need to break your fast. So many scholars misunderstood this example. And some of you may have heard an incorrect version of the story. So they say that you're going to jump into water, and by jumping into water, you're going to break your fast. But that's not the case. So they're saying that someone is drowning. So in order to save him, you need to swim. And by swimming, you're going to break your fast. Then you are excused from fasting, and you can break your fast to go and save that person. But that's not actually what the fuqaha meant, because swimming doesn't break your fast. All right? That's a very good question. Does swimming break one's fast? Yes or no? If you followed the lesson last week, you would have known what are the conditions for fast to be valid. For fast to be valid, there must be intention. I must abstain from anything that invalidates my fast. Does swimming invalidate my fast? Yes or no? If I swim in such a way that I keep my head above water, or when my head goes underwater, I make sure that no water enters my mouth. Right? I make sure that no water enters my mouth. Does my fast become invalid? No, my fast is not invalid. Water cannot enter through my ears. Water that goes through my eyes doesn't matter. We covered that. It's only water that's going to go through my mouth. And that will not invalidate the fast. Swimming does not invalidate the fast. However, our scholars, they say that all things of luxury invalidates is considered to be makruh while fasting. And therefore, swimming is considered a luxury. And therefore, swimming while fasting is considered to be makruh, but it doesn't invalidate the fast. The example of someone drowning, they said what happens if you see someone drowning, and now you can only go in you're too weak because you are fasting, but there's an energy bar. So by eating that energy bar, it will give you enough energy to go and save that person that is drowning. Then it's permissible for me to eat that energy bar and then jump in and go save the person, to go and save the person that is drowning. It's permissible when you see someone in need, whether it's a human being or whether it's an animal that requires your assistance. You can break your fast to go and assist that human being or assist that animal. All of these people, however, whether it's the traveler, whether it's the ill person, whether it's the pregnant lady, whether it's the breastfeeding lady, whether it's the person that went to ate an energy bar and jumped in to go and save someone that is drowning, all of them, they need to make qada of the day that they did not fast. They need to make qada of those days that they did not fast. And this is basically brings us to the end of the discussion that I wished to have with you today. And it's also an hour of class, and like I mentioned to you previously, my classes are generally not longer than 40, 45 minutes. That's long enough for me to teach, and that's an hour is very long for me. But I am going to look into your questions now very quickly. First in the general chat, then I'm going to go into the Q&A chat. The first here is from Iman. When it is wajib, age 8, to instruct child to fast, is it for a full day? Yes, you must instruct the child to fast the full day. If it doesn't fast, like I said, you fulfilled your wajib. Right? You fulfilled your wajib. If he breaks his fast, you can even give them something to eat after they broke their fast, because they're not fasting. But you need to instruct them to fast. You need to instruct them to fast. That is Allah's command towards you by His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when He said, command your children to pray, and analogous to the command of the Prophet commanding them to pray when they completed the age of 7. is command them to fast when they complete the age of 7. That's a full day of fasting, not a half day. Here's another question by Sister Nawal. A question I have regarding when a woman is unable to fast due to haid, does she need to pay fidya as well as pay the day back in? We thank Sister Nawal for that question. No, she doesn't have to pay fidya. The lady that has haid, she must make qada, but she doesn't have to pay fidya. However, a lady that did not fast, and now she needs to make qada for haid, if she's negligent by not fasting those days in until the next Ramadan enters. So there are many opportunities for her to fast, but she didn't fast on account of negligence, and a new Ramadan enters. She must still make qada. Let's say in 2022 Ramadan, she didn't fast 6 days. Tamam. Ramadan ends Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, Muharram, Safar, Rabi'ul Awwal, Rabi'. All year she's healthy. She's sitting in Nando's and she's going to Steers and Wimpy and you name it. And she's not fasting until a new Ramadan enters. She must still make qada of the 6 days that she did not fast in 2022. But now, since a new Ramadan has entered in 2023, she must pay fidya for the days of 2022 that she did not fast. Even though in the following year after Ramadan, she must still make qada of those 6 days. I'm now by the Q&A. If you don't fast due to traveling, must you pay a fidya for the days you don't fast? No. A traveler must make qada, and there's no fidya for the traveler. And then there's another question by a sister. If a lady pays fidya for her days out, is it necessary for her to pay fast her days in? Still, I've covered that already. First of all, she doesn't have to pay fidya for the days that she did not fast, number one. But she must make qada. She doesn't have to pay fidya, but she must make qada. Paying fidya will not absolve her from making qada. And then another question here by another sister. If you are a doctor and need to do something extraordinary, but feel faint when fasting, is it permissible to break? If the circumstances is extraordinary, right? I'm assuming our sister is a doctor. If the circumstances are extraordinary, then it should be likened to a person that is drowning, and now you need to eat something to go and save that person that is drowning. If that is the circumstance that you need to be saving someone's life, then by all means, if you're on the operating table and you're busy operating, and now it requires a deep level of concentration, and there's an emergency happening in the operating theater, and for you to go and call some other surgeon, is going to take too long, and this person may lose their life, and you just need to get some glucose into your system so you can focus correctly, yes, then by all means you break your fast and you save the life of that person. That would be permissible. But extraordinary circumstances it needs to be understood, because it's very vague and it's very broad. So you need to take every case, look at every case individually and ask yourself, does the same ruling of someone that is about to drown apply to my situation over here? The person that saw somebody drowning, right? And there is a bodyguard there, Mr. Bay watches there that is not fasting, he can go and save the person, then it's not permissible for me to break my fast if I see that his bodyguards are going to save him, right? It's only when there's no one there to save him, I must go and save him, but I can't do it because I'm weak, so now I can take some energy, a power aid, and jump in and save the person's life. Barakallah feekum. I think that answers all the questions that I have over here. May Allah bless you all and protect us all. There are some discussions that remain. So what I'm going to do is just to give more clarity to everyone, what I'm going to do at the beginning of the next class, there are 3 possibilities. There's sometimes you must make qada and pay no fidya. Tamam? Sometimes you must pay fidya, no qada. So first situation, qada, no fidya. Second situation, fidya, no qada. The third situation is you must make qada and pay fidya. So what I will do is I will look at all 3 again as a revision for us at the beginning of our next class. When do you only make qada, pay in a day that you must? When do you only pay fidya? You pay fidya, which is like a penalty for not fasting, but no qada. You don't pay in a day that you must. Second possibility. The third possibility is where you must pay in the day qada, and you must pay the penalty, the fidya. So those are all three possibilities. I covered them all already. If you think about it, I covered them all, but I will systematically look at each category when we meet next week. And this will also serve as a recap of next week. When we cover those three categories, it will serve as a recap for the dars that we had today, inshallah ta'ala. And then I'll also touch on i'tikaf. Very, very importantly, our author of the Essentials of Islam, Habib Ahmad Al-Habshi, what's his name now? Ahmad bin Zain Al-Habshi, discusses the spiritual aspects of fasting. We've covered the fiqh. The fiqh tends to be very dry. The fiqh doesn't put you on a spirit, doesn't allow you to grow spiritually in your anticipation for Ramadan and traveling to Allah and crying in front of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is very, very much the objective of Ramadan. However, the fiqh is dry. It's telling you what's halal, what's haram, what I must do, what I must not do. And therefore, when Habib Ahmad bin Zain al-Habshi gets into these discussions of the heart and the limbs and the higher meanings of fasting, that is very, very important for you and I. And we will be looking at that we'll start looking at the next week's class, and we'll conclude that spiritual dimensions of fasting in the final class, which is happening 2 weeks from now, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. There's another question from a sister. Going to the dentist, does it invalidate the fast? You should be able to answer that question yourself right now. You should be able to answer that question yourself. How do I answer the question? Number one is, the conditions for validity of fasting are 6. If I go to the dentist, am I breaking any of the conditions of validity of fasting? So now immediately you're going to tell yourself, if I go to the dentist, there's a possibility that I may consume something. Some commodity may go down my throat, and that invalidates my fast, right? That's the only thing that you should be thinking about. So if that is a possibility and something goes down my throat, my fast will be invalid. If nothing goes down my throat, my fasting won't be invalid. If I'm going to the dentist for an X-ray, right? So the dentist takes an X-ray, and after he takes the X-ray, if I fear that some foreign substance into my mouth, I go and rinse my mouth out and spit the water out, right? Then my fast is intact. Nothing broke now because nothing went down my throat. But if he's doing a tooth extraction or he's doing a filling and there's water in my mouth, and now the possibilities of water going down my throat are very high, then my fast will become invalid if anything goes down my throat. Now the next question I can ask myself then is that if there's a strong possibility that my fast may break if I'm going to the dentist, can I go to the dentist or not? And the simple answer is no, you can't. You can't intentionally break your fast unless you are sitting with a problem that is bringing harm to your body. I have a massive toothache that is causing me so much pain. Now, of course, I can go to the dentist because there's harm. My body is being harmed with the pain that I'm getting from a toothache. So now I can go to the dentist, even if it may lead to my fast being invalid, even if it may lead to the breaking of my fast. And this is how I should deal with all situations, right? It doesn't mean I should reach my own conclusions with every question that comes about. No, I need to consult with the ulama and the scholars. But the basic reasoning should be like this. Is there anything in this action that's going to break my fast? No, there's not. My fast will remain intact. Is there anything that's going to break my fast? Yes, it is going to break my fast. However, is there a reason that warrants me to break my fast? Traveling? I'm not traveling. Pregnant? I'm not pregnant. Breastfeeding? Not breastfeeding. Saving somebody? No, I'm not saving someone. Sickness? I do have a sickness. Is the sickness a sickness that warrants me to break my fast? That's the question I need to ask myself, and then I would determine the answers to my question by myself. I hope that clarifies that answer, brings clarity to our sister's question over here, whether going to the dentist will invalidate the fast or not. I've not only answered the question, but I've shared with you a methodology of how you should be thinking when it comes to anything that may, when any question comes to my mind, will this break my fast or not? Ya khair. Our class has now gone on for 1 hour and 5 minutes. And if there's no other questions, I'm going to conclude, inshallah ta'ala. Again, from my side, I want to apologize that unfortunately, this is fiqh. Fiqh is very dry and to the point. It's do's and don'ts and yes and no and halal and haram and valid and not invalid. That's how our fiqh is, right? But we should remind ourselves, over and over that this nitty-gritty that I'm getting into, this dry subject that has yes and no's and do's and don'ts, it is Allah's yeses and no's. And it is Allah's do's and don'ts. And it is Allah that is saying halal and not halal. And it is Allah that is saying fast is invalid or fast is not valid. And if I remind myself that this is Allah's Sharia and this is Allah's law, then it means I'm studying Allah. And I'm studying that which Allah has revealed. And I'm studying that which comes from Allah. And the one who loves Allah finds enjoyment, he finds spirituality, he finds proximity, he finds sweetness in everything that comes from Allah. And whatever we discuss comes from Allah. It is Allah's law, subhanahu wa tabaraka wa ta'ala. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward us for covering these important discussions and topics. May He facilitate that we understand them correctly, and that we are able to give guidance to others when they seek guidance. However, as I stated previously, whenever I'm uncertain or unsure about anything, then the best thing for me to do is to consult the scholars and the ulama. Allah said in the Quran, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. May Allah make you and I from the people of dhikr, from the people of knowledge, from the people that may offer guidance to others. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. We conclude with on that note بهذه النوايا وبما نوى سلفنا صالح وبما نوى سيد الحبيب عمر وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. The discussions that we start with next week and the week thereafter, in terms of our hearts, in terms of taking maximum benefit from Ramadan, are extremely important. I don't want anyone to feel that I've covered the halal and haram and the do's and don'ts, that I don't need to worry any further about my heart and the state of my heart and my relationship with Allah. The essence of fasting is what remains in the discussions that lie ahead. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those who are present. And like I've been encouraging you every week thus far, encourage as many people as you know to be part of the program. What lies ahead may be even more important than that which was covered. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows both, but best. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.